New Manor Lords gameplay is finally upon us. If you're unfamiliar, this is a medieval strategy game that has received some overwhelmingly positive feedback. Developed by, as I understand it, in most of the early stages but a single man, Manor Lords is a medieval strategy game that combines organic and in-depth city building with some battles and tactics from the likes of other games like Mount and Blade, Bannerlord, and the Total War franchise, and also, of course, it has that underlying social and economic simulation elements to it, so it really has the triple whammy. In this video, I'll be exploring some of the recent announcements around Manor Lords, including some new gameplay footage, a trailer, and a demo that we can all play, as well as exploring a little bit about what makes Manor Lords so special. Why is there so much hype around this indie game that's been in development for a few years and recently picked up by a publisher I'm very fond of, Hooded Horse. My name is JumboPixel. If you'd like to hang around for more, I'd encourage you to subscribe, but either way, let's begin. And we're beginning with some very exciting news in the backdrop of this brand new Manor Lords gameplay that shows us a variety of different things, from the dynamic weather, which has real in-game effects, more on that later, the different units, combat, and of course city building, and maybe even just sitting around and having a beer with your mates. Either way, this little tiny trailer has it all, but the point of this 1-minute trailer, then we'll move into some gameplay footage soon, is that this game is coming to the Steam Next Fest from the 3rd of October to the 10th of October. It'll be our first chance to play what you'll see on screen in a minute they're calling a free city building demo. Surely we'll get to at least take a look at one of the three elements that make this game so unique: it's city building. Speaking of, let's now move through into some gameplay footage of Manor Lords, and then we'll take a deeper dive into some combat footage. The idea being that I want to explore what actually makes this game so special, and why, as you saw at the start of the video, it's got people so hyped. First and foremost, of course, we can't do anything without city building, the core mechanic that will likely feature in the demo, and of course be a crucial part of Manor Lords. Manor Lords takes an interesting approach to city development, where the map is divided into different regions. Each region has, of course, its own resources, potentially climate, weather, geography, and a development tree. Upgrading the development of a region, like you're seeing on screen through different buildings and that kind of thing, will earn us some optimization in that area and also allow us to move along this development tree, get extra benefits, features, resources, that kind of thing. As we develop regions, they'll begin to specialize, perhaps on farming or mining or goods manufacturing, and that will allow us to trade. Trade and free merchants are really the core way to generate wealth. Here you can see them on screen arriving in town, outside of course, the Lord's Treasury, your private treasury that's fueled through taxation. Trade and the free merchants are really the only way to generate money in Manor Lords. For your personal Lord's treasure, there are different types of tax, of course. One notable one might be the church tithes, which you can exchange for influence. Which leads me quite nicely through into the second core gameplay element of Manor Lords, and that is diplomacy. While this is a city builder and strategy game, there's a little bit of diplomacy at work, for you aren't the only lord in the world, of course. And there is a king above you, because how could you be a lord if there wasn't a king to reign over you? In Manor Lords, the king can dish out rewards to influential, leading back to that influence mechanic potentially, and powerful lords within the region, granting them resources or even more land to build on and grow even stronger still. Moreover, you can also engage with other lords in the region, not just peacefully, but also a little bit aggressively. You can lather insults, welcoming, and you can bargain with other lords. So there is a military element, but also a trade element to the diplomacy inside of Manor Lords. If all else fails, and maybe your gameplay goes a little south, there is of course a combat mechanic. And really, as we take a deep dive and I move through into the next part of this footage, you're going to get a feel for the game and the sense of scale that it delivers. This is not just a city builder where you're trying to survive, build a couple of shacks, farm some stuff. There's actually a massive tactics and combat system laid underneath. And actually, laid underneath is probably not doing it justice. Let's take a look at some of the footage of the different troop types and also the different ways that we can use them in Manor Lords. These troops have all sorts of different things, from gear, loads of different combat abilities, and when you actually come into a fight, it will feel, like I mentioned at the start of the video, similar, but not identical to fights in something like Total War. Potentially also Mountain Blade Bannerlord, although less of a sort of first-person control and more of that overarching tactics view. Here we can see, entering into battle, the 3 different types of units that are available in Manor Lords. First and foremost, you have Peasant Militia. These are largely, as you can imagine, improvised units, right? They're grabbing their pitchforks and torch and they're going out to wail away at some people. It will hurt your economy to use them, of course, because they are your peasantry, but they can be trained and upgraded through those classic kind of buildings that strategy gamers have come to know and love, like the barracks, for example. The second type of units that are available are mercenaries. These, of course, look much more sophisticated, have much better armor, and will cost you a lot of silver. Thirdly, and lastly, we have the Lord's Retinue. This is a class that we don't really know too much about, other than it's a heavily armored and customizable unit based on the kind of lord that we'd like to be. More broadly, you will notice in this footage that the combat system in Manor Lords relies on a few different things. Formations and waypoints are key to setting up a battle and orchestrating where and how you'll send your units in. Next, you will have also noticed me zoom in a few times throughout this video on a couple of interesting things involving gear, troop morale, charge, all of that kind of thing. The issuing of equipment, gear, and resources is also really important, of course, because it's how this game interlocks the combat system with the economy, your resources, what you have, and what seems to be pretty detailed supply and demand system for resources in this game as well. Acknowledging, of course, that really we don't trade a lot with other players, and so the resources that we're building are literally the ones that we're using to fuel these mighty charges. The map itself is not only beautifully animated, seemingly, inside of the combat itself, as you can see on screen, but also, of course, the wider world. This is ultimately a city builder, and it prides itself on organic city building, where you spread out from a central marketplace, building residential, commercial, industrial districts. There is no fixed grid, you see. It's open and free, up to you to have branching roads and beautiful medieval-style buildings. You can also, in very sort of city planning style, assign areas for housing and watch as residents build their homes in accordance with just exactly how you've plotted it out. Extensions to homes guiding our settlements through different resources and different demand opportunities. Some of them, for example, are brought about by the dynamic weather system, which again, not only plays out in combat, affecting troop morale or performance, but also our settlements and cities as well. Opportunities of the season might be brought by spring rains to our farms, or hindered, of course, by those harsh medieval snows throughout the winter. Overall, I think that I've painted a fairly concise picture here on what Manor Lords has to offer, and hopefully you can understand a little bit better about why people are so excited for this game. And to reflect on some of the comments that I showed at the start of the video, it does seem that this project, started by a solo developer, could very well deliver the kind of city building strategy and simulation experience that many companies have tried and failed to do. Thank you very much for watching. Do take their advice and leave a like for the YouTube algorithm, and I'll see you next time.